And let's get started. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Frederick Schol here. Frederick Schol is a program director and associate professor of Quinnipiac's new Masters of Cybersecurity program. And prior to this position, he started the cybersecurity program at Lipscomb University in Nashville. He taught information security at Vanderbilt University and managed enterprise security for Nissan Americas. He has also consulted on information security since 1991, and he is a senior member of ISSA and IEEE. So put your hands together and welcome Dr. Frederick Schol. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? If anybody wants to move up, I won't be, I think it might be a good idea. I made the slides big, but not so big for the back of the room. But aren't these things cool? These are the best badges I've ever seen at any security conference, right? You all agree? How many people are new here, just out of curiosity, to BSidesCT? How many new attendees? Wow, quite a few, right? Holy cow. Plus, I saw it was sold out. I'm so happy you guys invited me to be a keynote speaker. It's almost impossible to get into any of these BSides. So, my talk is going to be about threat modeling, but then I remembered this is supposed to be a keynote speech, and this is only my second keynote speech. So I had to try to, figure out what should I do for a keynote speech. So I texted Jack Daniel, right? You all know him. He kind of started BSides, and he said, well, don't make it too technical. So I said, all right, that's a good idea. Then I texted Win Schwartau. I'm actually based in Nashville now, and he's in Nashville, and he gives like keynote speeches every week. And he said, well, try to be a little controversial. Then how many people went to DerbyCon? One, way in the back. Anyway, there was the keynote speaker there gave the presentation in his underwear. So I'm not going to do that. I can't go that far. I'm in academia. I have to be a little bit straightforward. So, but I am going to try to, see if I can get the slides to work. I am going to talk about threat modeling, which is some work that I've done for two agencies when I was doing consulting for Center for Medicare and Medicaid, and then also Vanderbilt University. Now I'm in academia, but I have to have a word from my sponsor. And actually, I'm pretty excited about that. So in September, I started a new position. I'm actually moving from Nashville to Connecticut. So if you know anything bad about Connecticut, don't tell me, okay? I'm already here. It's too late. I know about I-95, and I know about the Merritt Parkway. I don't want to hear about anything else. So, so we are starting a new online cybersecurity master's degree program. It started in September. I'm excited about it for some reasons. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we are focusing on NSA NIST Cyber Defender compliance, but that's not all we're doing. I mean, that's kind of the minimum. I'm really focusing on cloud security. I just see so many things going into the cloud, so we've got to get people practicing security sort of as well in the cloud as they do on-prem. And then the same thing with software security. I have an electrical engineering background, unfortunately, so I don't have a really good software background. But I have been really trying to learn this stuff, and I see so much, pretty much everything in security is going into software, so I'm emphasizing that. It's fully online, and we have enrollment in fall, spring, and summer. So if you're interested in a master's degree, obviously reach out to me. We have our next classes starting in January. On the other hand, if you're interested in teaching one of these courses, reach out to me too. Our courses are 1 credit hour courses. So we purposely divided it up into really small bite-sized chunks so we can get outside industry experts to teach a specific area that they know well. And also, if you're from the vendor side or even user side and you want to do a guest lecture, I can easily bring you in as a guest lecturer using Zoom. And then the last thing is, if you're a vendor and you have products you want to sell, I'm happy to consider those too. We can incorporate them into our class. As long as they're free, I'm happy to use them. So the agenda for today, I wanted to throw in a little about what are the big picture topics that I see in security, and then relate that to threat modeling tools. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on that, then talk about what is threat modeling. It's something that I see sort of coming up in the world, or people are becoming more aware of it. And then I heard this good talk by Win Schwartau, whom I mentioned. He said he's had this awareness training company in Nashville for many years, and then so he gave a good talk on how to fail at awareness training. So I'm kind of copying his idea. And then I will go back and talk a little bit about how to succeed at threat modeling. There's about 8 different tools that you can use. You don't really need any tool. You can use a spreadsheet. But I want to talk about some of the tools that are out there. And then one of the big challenges is where do you get good baseline threat libraries? And then I want to talk about some of the use cases where I've used threat modeling, as I mentioned, at CMS in Baltimore and then Vanderbilt Medical in Nashville. And then some of the opportunities in the future. So, this is the one constant that I see in our industry right now. Everything seems to be changing. And what do you guys think? What has changed in the field or your job or your role in security, let's say in the last 12 to 24 months? Has anything changed? What? I have to turn the mic? I have to stand in front of the mic. Okay, so repeat the question, which is what is this group seeing in terms of changes in the field or changes in your job and security, specifically in the last like 12 to 24 months? Anything? More mobile device use, or? Okay. What's that? Crypto jacking? Yeah? Pardon? APTs, okay. I haven't seen that one. Okay, that must be pretty new. Okay. Ransomware as a cloud service. All right. What else in the back? Exactly. Mass, yeah, like lemmings. Yeah, mass rush to the cloud. That's hard to pronounce. Yeah, anything else? There's got to be more. Exactly. Privacy standards. Yep, that's another one. Yes, sir. Machine learning. Okay. How about IoT exploits, right? They're coming. How about in terms of your jobs or positions or roles? Are companies more open to security initiatives, or spending more money, or less open, or about the same? Same? Okay. Yes, sir. They want to spend more on products than professionals. Yeah, what could we do about that? That's a problem. We're not products here, right? So I think these are all good points. This is, somehow I see the field as, like in the last 24 months, it's partly because of the cloud or other newer kinds of things that we have to do, right? One gentleman mentioned privacy, fake news is another one, IoT. So we're being given new things that we have to do. And so I've been tracking this. I should have tracked more of these things, then I could be in the recruiting business, but I tracked one job trend since 2012. So I started teaching security in 2012, and I always like to look at what do people need to know when they get out of the program, right? So I started looking at this, and I saw, okay, oops, I can't move here. Cloud jobs were going up a little bit, right? Nothing too exciting, but I did include cloud in some of the courses I was teaching 2012. Then at 2013, small increase, didn't go up too much. Then 2014, wow, it really started to go up. Up here, I thought, okay, the cloud wave is kind of stopping, right? It's sort of leveling off there. And then look what happened in 17, 18, 19. We're not up to 19 yet, right? We're still up to 18. But anyway, I just did that last data point yesterday, 114,000 cloud jobs. Now, this isn't a scientific survey. I am an electrical engineer, but I didn't use data analytics because this includes jobs in St. Cloud, Minnesota, if they're, I don't think they're growing that fast though, right? So I think it's, I'll stand by these numbers. So this is kind of, how many people are working in the cloud now in their current job? Wow, not that many. So there's still a lot of room for growth, right? So this curve's going to keep going up. That's what this quick poll shows me. Wow, exciting. Okay. But I think this is changing everything because so many of the tools are in the cloud. You need to set up cloud networks at the same time. You secure them as well as securing your on-prem data, your traditional network. So this is a huge driver. And then here's another one. I don't know, has anybody read this book by Mark Schwartz? It came out last year, Seat at the Table. Nobody. So I was in this area, lived in this area for about 25 years, moved to Tennessee for 12 years, sent 2 kids to college. They're still there, thank goodness. And so now we're moving back. But I was a member of the Fairfield Westchester SIM chapter, Society for Information Management. And the reason I stayed in that chapter, it was an organization of CIOs. And I always wanted to know, what are CIOs thinking? And this guy, Mark Schwartz, was a CIO of the U.S. Immigration Society in D.C. And you can imagine what a tough job that is, right? So I guess he left. Now he's working for Amazon. But he wrote this book talking about the trends in IT. And the trend he highlights was simply that the business people are taking over more and more of the technology function, right? It's not just standing in the CIO world. And he said, well, if you want a seat at the table, this is what you have to do. And so, for example, when I did this threat modeling work at Center for Medicare and Medicaid in Baltimore, it was a very interesting project. We were developing the next generation Medicare and Medicaid payment systems, and guess where the developers and technology people were? They were not in the office of the CIO. They were out in an agent in a subdivision of CMS. They were all there. So I was consulting in the Central Security Group. We had to influence them. They weren't even in the same department that we were. And so this is what he's saying: CIOs need to make this transition from running everything to kind of setting standards and being influencers. And I see the same thing could happen to security. I know some organizations that have very strong security folks out in the business units. And so security could follow. I think it will follow. We'll get more engaged with the business. So just out of curiosity, how many people here in their organization see the security team, are parts of the security team directly in the business units themselves in any of your organizations? They are? Okay. And anybody else? So in the back also? Oh, quite a few people then, right? So that's not a mega trend yet, but it's kind of an initial trend that, more of us need to learn more about the business. And so that's what this book was about. It's about a year old. He switched to Amazon, but I still think it's worth reading. So I'm going to propose threat modeling as a way. It's a tool, it's a technology, but it's a way to it's a way to manage risk and to engage the business, because it looks at risks, values, threats, vulnerabilities, all in one screen. And that's kind of the holy grail of security, right? If you can connect your threats to your risks, to your assets, then you can make $1 gazillion if you know how to do that. So this is one possible way of doing that. So as I said, I don't claim to be an expert in threat modeling. I'm a change agent now. I'm really trying to help working professionals make, as one student said, 90-degree changes in their career path to get into security. Hopefully not 180-degree changes, right? I'm glad he just said 90-degree changes. But anyway, so the work I've done over the last few years was for CMS and Vanderbilt Health. And I'd played with threat modeling, and it was kind of frustrating because what is threat modeling? This is such a dumb term. What does this mean? And then finally, I figured out that it's really just risk analysis for applications and systems. And this guy, Richard Baitleek, he's pretty famous, right? I forgot exactly what he did, but he's like a household word in security. And he wrote this very good blog post back in 2007 talking about, hey, this really isn't threat modeling per se. It's just risk analysis that we're doing. It's a risk analysis method. And the term threat modeling came about from Microsoft back when they came up with this, right, early 2000s. So all you're really doing is looking at risk, and you're starting with your threats. Usually we do vulnerability management. We start with vulnerabilities, or we look at asset values. In the case of threat modeling, you're looking at what are the threats that are out there. So it forces you to go through, catalog your threats, and understand what the impact, or the tool helps you figure out what the impact could be on the business. As I said, it's a process and a tool. So why bother to do this? So I'm going to throw in some compliance stuff, of course. We have to start with compliance. So if you are working with 853, you're not required to do threat modeling, but there is something called a control enhancement. SA-15 control enhancement. How many people do work with 853? Anybody? Quite a few, right? It's sort of pervasive. Are you guys government contractors or part of the federal government or both? Both, okay. So 853 is kind of complicated, right? But if you have a sensitive system, you can put in place what's called a control enhancement. And threat modeling is one of those control enhancements. If you work for DOD, they have something called the BSides. Anybody working for DOD here? One in the back, okay. So you guys, you raise your hand for a lot of stuff, right? Good. They have the BSides for application security and development does require threat modeling for level 2 applications. And what else do we have? So good practice under OWASP, SAM, security, application security maturity model, I think that stands for. It is required for maturity level 1. SafeCode was kind of started by Microsoft. By the way, SafeCode, how many people go to safecode.org or scan that site? Anybody? One or two? That's a really good site to understand application security. They have a lot of good training videos and things there. They have stuff on how to use threat modeling, and they have a best practice of application security, and they do require threat modeling also. And now that I'm in the education business, we're using the NICE NSA knowledge units, and they have it in their life cycle security knowledge unit. So I thought that was interesting. What else? So it's simply a means to facilitate conversation with business and security. If you're in security, you want to get out of the security silo and get out and collaborate with your developers. How many people are developers here? All right, I hope I can talk to you guys, because that's a challenge. They speak different language than the business guys do. So I'm trying to learn the application development. This is a tool to get your developers and your security people in the same room. So also Gartner, I just saw, anybody from Gartner here? Nope, okay, well, I guess I can say whatever I want, but anyhow, they we're pretty close to Gartner. They might be right outside. They do have this hype cycle, right? You've seen the hype cycle, and this is for application security. I thought this was pretty interesting, because they do, when something becomes almost mainstream, they give it an acronym. And so they've given threat modeling and application security a new, it's ASTM now, that's their acronym. So I don't know if that means that the whole field's going to collapse in 2 years or it's going to grow, one or the other, right? But it's interesting, it's on the rising, this is the peak of inflated expectations up at the top, as they call it. So threat modeling is trying to get up to that area. We'll see if it gets there. Okay, so what are the goals of threat modeling? You want to, everything in security, I had the good opportunity to meet Ron Ross, the head of the cyber program at NIST when I was working for CMS. So he's really big on, and everybody's big on, let's identify risks up front. Identify risks up front, that's his mantra. And it makes so much sense, because we in security, it's amazing that we accept the idea that, well, we're going to have to do static testing, dynamic testing, we're going to have to do pen testing, we're going to have to fix things after they're built. Imagine, I used to work for Nissan. Imagine, you know, cars coming off the production line, people testing them, well, is this car working or not working? You know, nobody would do that, right? People would get fired. When those cars come off the production line, they work, and they work for 100,000 miles. But in this field, security, systems development, we accept the fact that there are going to be errors in the system, and then we'll fix them later, and hopefully before the hackers do. So one of the goals of threat modeling is especially identify your architectural risk for new systems. It doesn't find code flaws, it finds design flaws. And I think right now we have enough code flaws and design flaws. I think some of the code flaws are going to get fixed as people use more standard libraries. You know, I'm an electrical engineer. You wouldn't go build, you know, create your own chip if you're building a circuit board, right? You just buy standard parts that had standard tests. And I think I see that kind of happening in the software world. I don't know if the developers here would agree, but more and more available libraries are going to be used instead of creating your own code. And then neutral platforms. So not all the tools I'm talking about are neutral. Something like Microsoft has a threat modeling tool. I'm calling that sort of neutral. Maybe not right if you're working at Amazon, but you want some kind of a neutral tool that enables collaboration of security and development and the business people. And you want to get a different point of view, as I said, looking at things from the point of view of threats, not vulnerabilities. So different point of view, I pulled a couple of slides here. So the trick about risk is always what point of view do you have, right? Are you looking down in the weeds? Are you looking up at, you know, 10,000 feet up in the air? Neither one of them gets all the risks, right? So you want to look at both. So I saw this mouse here. I guess he missed the risks from up above, and this mouse missed the risks down below, right? So there's risks at all levels. And as part of, for security professionals, we really need to be looking at all different levels. Then how to fail at threat modeling. And it's pretty easy to fail at threat modeling. So one thing is, so you have these tools, whether it's Microsoft or some other tool, and they have the ability to suck in a lot of data and a lot of information about systems. So if you pick the scope too big, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get hundreds of threats. And your developers aren't going to, nobody's going to be able to handle it. It's kind of like vulnerability scanning, right? So if you scan your whole system and just look at all the threats without any kind of way of prioritizing them, you're not going to be able to do anything. So the same thing with threat modeling. You have to come up with a scope. The scope could be a system. It could be a switch. It could be a new cloud application. You have to look at it at the right level and have some agreement with your business folks. So has anybody seen this movie, The Birds? Maybe I'm too old. A few people have seen it. I kind of like this movie. So this is where the birds are chasing the kids out of the school. So this will be your developers. You know, if you don't have a well-chosen scope and you run one of the threat modeling tools, they'll just head for the hills. So you have to really pick the scope correctly. It needs to be, you know, the Goldilocks here, not too big, not too small, just right. So what other ways are there? So one way is to think you're modeling the kill chain. Do people use the kill chain here, the MITRE kill chain? A couple people use it, 3, 4. I don't know if everybody else is just not paying attention or tired or whatever. But you're not really modeling the kill chain. And I wish I could see I can't walk over here. Can you guys hear me if I talk loud? No? I'm back. So the kill chains, so just as an example, the beginning of the kill chain has reconnaissance, right? You're looking to see what holes does the system have. Then you're weaponizing, you're delivering. So threat modeling doesn't model this whole thing. You're not modeling reconnaissance, for example. You're not modeling maintain persistence on the right. You're only modeling one piece, which is when the person breaks into the system. So it's not perfect. It has a lot of things it doesn't do. It doesn't model lateral movement. So if somebody breaks into a system, we don't have good enough threat modeling tools so you can model how you hop around from one system to the next. That's what we'd like to have, but the tools don't do that yet. They just say, they do? Which one? A TiVo? Are you a vendor? Are you here? Outstanding. Okay. I'm going to talk to you afterwards. Very good. So most vendors do not allow you to do that, put it that way. I don't mind being corrected. So that's very interesting. So in general, yeah, you have to be sure what are you modeling? And there's also the MITRE attack framework. You're not modeling all the steps, except for maybe the gentleman in the back. You're not modeling all the steps in the MITRE attack framework. Oops, let's see. I tried to do a tool comparison. Can anybody in the back see this? You can? It's so exciting. All right, I tried to do this last night so people like 20 feet away could see this, and I guess the slides are going to be available, right? So if you want any follow-up information, I assume you can get these slides. So I just did a super quick evaluation of the different tools that are out there. The only ones I've really used in depth are the first two, Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool, and then Threat Modeler, the second one. The others I've looked at a little bit. So Microsoft TMT, I put strengths and cautions. That's what Gartner does, right? I wasn't going to put strengths and weaknesses. I thought I might get in trouble. So I put strengths and cautions. So one strength is it's free. You can download it and start running it. I think it's very cool. And it has really added in the last, I'm not working for Microsoft, but they've added a tremendous number of new icons based on Azure. And they've also probably tripled the number of threats that are in there in the last 18 months or so. So it's a great way to get started. It's free. One caution is they don't have a lot of information on how to fix things. So you find, okay, here's a threat. They don't really give a lot of information on what to do. Now this next tool, Threat, and it's also, as I've seen it, it's more of a one-person tool. One person use it. Maybe you have a group sitting in a room, but it's not an enterprise shared application. This next tool, Threat Modeler, is a commercial tool. It's web-based software as a service. Multiple people can use it at the same time. It's a commercial, it's enterprise threat modeling tool. It's not free. It has a it does have a very good built-in knowledge base of threats. It has, I don't know, 400 or 500 different kinds of threats associated with different components. So it's very good. Caution, it's a smaller company with 7 kind of delivery partners. Then another company that I learned about is Continuum Security. They have a product called Irius. They're in Spain. The strength of this product is very closely aligned with the development process. The guy who's running it, I'm blanking on his name now, but he's been in application security for many years. He's like a real guru in that area. So that's good if you want to use this specifically for doing threat modeling with the developers. So it ties into things like Jira. Then FAIR is another one. Has anybody used FAIR in their company? You have. How is it working out? Plus, minus, no comment? Yeah, that sounds fair. So, yeah, I described it as I have not personally used it. I've seen demos. It's an enterprise tool. It may not be suitable it's great for enterprise, I think, but it might not be so good for fast-moving, agile development teams. It might be really hard to implement. And then another one, Security Compass up in Canada. They use a simple questionnaire approach. So the team fills out a questionnaire, and then from that, they're able to analyze threats that might be out there. There's some other open source ones, OWASP, Threat Dragon. So I think I've seen a number of these open source projects get going. They don't seem to have gotten traction. This one only has 4 contributors. C-Sponge is another one, last commit a couple years ago. And then the newest one is Tutomantic. Has anyone tried that by any chance? Or it's a startup company, and their premise is they want to take a Visio diagram of your network and applications. You feed it into them, and then they'll generate a threat model. I haven't done a lot with it, but it seems like a good idea, because with these other tools, you sort of have to create your own diagram just for the tool, which is pretty horrible. You should be able to get some from your CMDB or some other tool, should be able to import information into threat modeling, but I haven't seen that yet. So those are quick comparison of the tools. So this is going to be hard to see, I'm sorry. So I'm illustrating some things that I did with threat modeling. This was for Center for Medicare and Medicaid, and so I picked the scope as a single transaction going from an authentication service back to a key value database, request response. I put one machine trust boundary in there. This was in AWS. So this prints out a list of threats associated just with this. This would be connected with, or in this case, I'd be collaborating with a specific development team implementing a use case around authentication. So I picked a really simple scope. Here's another one. In this case, this was also a CMS system, but I took out a lot of the stuff, or the details. Here, I was using the tool for third-party risk modeling. This particular application had many partners, and you can see in each one of these Dev build guys, end users. So by running a model like this, you get a list of threats for each one of these interactions with the different third parties. And everybody knows how important third-party risk is. I'm not showing the results of this, but when you run this, you get a list, you kind of get a checklist. Here are all the threats. You sit down with the systems engineers, you say, did you address this? Did you address this? If the answer is yes, then you check that off. So it raises issues in an organized, hopefully not confrontational or not too confrontational way. And again, this is not going to be possible to see in the back, but this is the output of the threat modeling tool. So here it comes out with the Microsoft threat modeling tool. Here it says, are you doing enough auditing? Are you collecting logs for this particular process? And the other fun thing about it is you can add in additional fields in there. I did some customization. How does this threat relate to 853, or how does it relate to CWE? Can you put in a user story? I was working with developers, so I wanted to put in a security user story. So you can add in a lot of custom features into this tool. And that's true of the other ones I've looked at too. And here's another one that's going to be not recognizable. This is Threat Modeler, the commercial tool I talked about, the enterprise tool that enables multiple users. The good thing is it has a ton of components that you can just click and drag into your model. So if you want to use Azure Traffic Manager, you click on that, drag it into your model. It has built-in threats and remediations. So these guys go a lot further than Microsoft in terms of built-in threats and remediations. And there's probably 400 or 500 different things in their toolkit. So you're basically paying them for their knowledge base. And this is another one you can't see. So the output of Threat Modeler, it's going to show the nature of the threat, whether high, medium, or low, its status, and then it shows source. So you create the diagram, and then it will output a threat, and it says, this is where this threat is coming from. So that enables you to go back. You can't just deal with the whole system at once. So it'll tell you where the threats are, where they originate from, which is important. This is Arius Risk. Won't spend too much time on this. They go through another interview process with developers. They have a rules engine, and then they output different kinds of threats. So one of the big kind of missing links is where do you get a baseline of threats? Because your business is going to be different. Now if you use any of these tools, you just can't use them out of the box, right? That's not due diligence. You just, I'm going to buy this tool, start running it. You have to make sure that it's incorporating the threats that you have for your business. So where do you get a library of threats? That's one of the challenges. So you can start with kind of a baseline that maybe comes with the tool. And the big plus of this is once you create that library, you can use it for other projects in your company. You're not reinventing the wheel all the time. You have to keep it up to date. So libraries that I've seen are KPEC. Almost got too many attack patterns, like 517 attack patterns. Can you manage that? Microsoft, the threat modeling tool, I think I just counted last night 177 threats built into that. And I'm excited because 18 months ago, there were only 41 threats. So they're really keeping it up to date with Azure threats. Threat Modeler, the commercial tool, there's 400, 500, 600 threats built into that tool. The latest one was High Trust. Has anybody seen the High Trust threat catalog? Yes, a couple of people have seen it. So I just got an email about that. Not being an academic, I downloaded, I looked at it. It seems pretty interesting. It seems like it has about 150 threats. So it's not too many, not too few, pretty well documented. The only bad news is you can't use it unless you subscribe to High Trust, I guess, right? So I don't know how much that is. So, but it's nice to look at. So if you could work out a way to use that, that might be good. So I like that. The other ones I put in need of work here. Google Cloud Platform. How many people are using Google Cloud Platform, just out of curiosity? 1, 2, 3, a few. Versus, how about AWS? More. How about Azure? I think Azure and AWS are kind of tied, and GCP is kind of behind. So I didn't see a lot of threat modeling work on GCP. I used it a little bit. They were using it at Vanderbilt Medical. Azure, I put in need of work. On the other hand, it's in need of work in the sense that they don't have a lot of remediations in the Microsoft threat modeling tool. They have been doing a really good job on putting more threats into the modeling tool, which I'm impressed with. So some application development use cases. This is some other work I did for CMS. It's kind of related, but while I was at CMS, Trump said everybody has to follow the NIST cybersecurity framework in the federal government, right? They already have to follow 853. Now they all have to follow the cybersecurity framework. So I was kind of excited about that. I was working with these application developers, so I said, how can we use the cybersecurity framework in the application development lifecycle? So this is kind of what I came up with. I said, we've got identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. We're going to identify vulnerabilities. We're going to protect the code base from those. We're going to detect vulnerabilities that get through, respond to issues, and then recover. So that was my idea. And then threat modeling, I put in the identify. It's not going to identify coding errors, but it can identify architectural errors, the big picture things that can cause huge failure. So I put it over there. Then down in the bottom, I put this relative mitigation cost. This is, if you look at software development, cost studies, they'll say that if you fix a bug in the, at the developer desktop, it may cost $1. If you fix it when in production, it's 100. I feel we don't put enough emphasis on that in the security field because our bugs are the same kind of bugs as functional bugs, right? So this curve should really drive more emphasis on getting stuff right before it even goes further down the pipeline. And this is also too hard to read, but this was just, you can look at it in the slides afterwards. This is how to incorporate threat modeling in an agile DevOps process. So what are some of the opportunities? So move the security conversation to the front end. And I haven't had 100% success getting developers engaged, but I think it's the goal not to make them security professionals, but use these kind of tools to have more conversations at the beginning. Enable a smarter risk analysis. So if you have the tools built out, then you can apply them to the next project without reinventing the wheel. What else? Find new threats to code architecture and reusability. I already mentioned that, reusability of analysis. And then this is another thing that Ron Ross emphasizes at NIST, take the systems point of view. Take a systems point of view. So if you use the model that I built with all the third parties in there, then you can, in that context, you can definitely take a systems point of view. So I hope that these tools enable people to translate between dev, ops, business, and security and come up with a more resilient system in the beginning. So I started out talking about change. I think the field is changing. It's just unbelievable how much it's changing. I think the opportunities are for us to help create that change. And if it, you know, it's going to mean collaborating more with the business for sure. Taking new courses, online courses, getting new degrees. The whole field is just incredibly exciting these days with all the new opportunities. So let's all create change. I have a couple of references. Adam Shostak is the guru in threat modeling. He kind of really popularized it at Microsoft. And he gave a very good presentation at the last Black Hat. I wasn't there, but it's online. I definitely recommend that. And then there's also an OWASP threat modeling Slack channel. I think it has like 500 people in it now. So this field could be growing, and it might be good to just connect with people in that Slack channel. And you can reach me if you have more questions or don't get the slides or have any other thoughts or comments. And that's about it. Does anybody have any comments they want to make on anything I said, or questions? Or yes, sir. Yeah. That is what I have done. And that's not that's like at a low maturity level. That's maturity level 1. And that's about as far as I've gotten. It should be that you're kind of sitting around you're part of the sprint and working together. And one of the things I've found that's difficult is, like when I was using the threat modeling tool, the Microsoft threat modeling tool, it deals with data flow. It wants to know data's flowing from this node to this node. And it was difficult to have that. I found it hard to have that conversation with the developers because they weren't thinking about that. They were thinking about APIs. They're connecting, only after a lot of the project development work had been done, then they would document it. So that was the challenge I faced. Yes, this is the way I did it, is I had to wait until they'd kind of documented a lot of the project and then run the threat model, and that's not the right way to do it. So there's still more work. So we have several programming courses in our curriculum. I'm hoping we can get more conversation going with developers and figure out what information can they give us that we can put into that threat modeling tool or the other one. So it's an open area for work, in my opinion. 3 minutes left. Yes, sir. Open source libraries, it makes me really nervous. I'm sort of a traditional engineer. You know what's in your system. They were doing this at CMS. They had so many open source libraries coming into these systems, and they used Black Duck, I think, to look for vulnerabilities. So it's an area that makes me nervous, and I'm not sure who's solved the problem. How do we have the assurance that these libraries are going to not just work today, but then they're going to keep on working? And some of these, that people do things like looking at how many developers are there. Like I wouldn't use CSponge. There's only 4 developers. They haven't made any recent commits. But so I think it's an area that more work is needed. I don't have good answers for that. That's a good question. Any other questions? I got 1 minute. So anyway, thanks for having me, and I look forward to hearing all the other talks. And if you have comments or things that we should put in our master's degree program or want to be part of it in any way, shape, or form, let me know. So thanks very much.